Hey, it's Chef Evelyn here, and today I wanted to do a little bit of a different video. Typically, when I come and do a video with you, I have notes, I have bullet points that I want to make, but today I just want to just, speak from the heart, off the dome, nothing pre-planned. I just felt compelled to have this conversation about when you reach a fork in the roads in your culinary entrepreneurship business. I went to a brunch earlier today, and I was at a restaurant where I know this chef. I know the owner. I've known him before he had the restaurant, back when he was like catering exclusively and doing like private chef services. And we were just having a brief dialogue because I was there with some of my sorority sisters. We were just having a brief dialogue about, the industry and culinary school and all that kind of stuff. And, we were kind of dancing around the fact that there comes a point in your culinary entrepreneurship career where you really have got to make some definitive choices. If you've been someone who, I was this person where it was like, I left my corporate job and, I was out here, I had, cooked for celebrities. I was doing a little bit of this, doing a little bit of that. I was making money, but it was kind of like, okay, I'm getting older. Life is progressing. I really want to become more official with this thing. And, I tell my clients all the time that cooking and getting paid is not a business. You can cook and get paid, and that's a hobby, right? There's no systems, there's no strategy, there's no sustainability. It's just a constant lifestyle of being a full-time side hustler. And so, in our brief conversation, because like I said, I was there with some other people. In our brief conversation, we were just talking about how, it's not always as sexy as people think it is. And I've talked about this before, maybe not here on this channel, but just with friends, with other people in the industry that, I remember when the Food Network came onto the scene, and it really glamorized the profession of being a chef. And I know that and as a lot of you who watch me, we don't fit into this stereotypical chef box of kind of working in a restaurant 90 hours a week, came up that way. That may not necessarily be our story. We may be career changers. We may be passionate home cooks who, went to culinary school and got in the industry or however we got to where we are today, where we have this culinary business of ours. But we were talking about how, it wasn't always glamorous, even working for celebrity clients, like it's great on your bio, it's great on your resume, but sometimes it's not always as fun in practical application as it looks like to outsiders. And, it got me thinking on my way home and it made me want to come and film this video and say that, you do hit a fork in the road. I remember hitting a fork in the road and going, I've got to decide if I really want to be official with this thing, or if I keep want to be on the fence and dangling on the side of, well, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to engineering, or, well, if it doesn't work out, I just remember that my mindset at the time, was just getting clients and getting paid. There was no thought to structure. There was no thought to scaling. There was no thought to sustainability. There was no thought to having support. I mean, yes, maybe people coming to help and cook and all that kind of stuff. But as my life started to progress, I got to a point where I was like, Evelyn, what are we going to do here? Right? You're 1 foot in, you're 1 foot out. And I won't even say 1 foot out, as in going back to corporate, because at that point I had been out of corporate America as an engineer for so long, but it was like, am I going to go back and be an employee with a company in the culinary world, or am I really going to make a go for this? And I remember I had to kind of cut the cord, right? I had to say I don't have a plan B. I had to really say it's not a if this works, it's I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this work. And I remember, hearing a sermon years ago from T.D. Jakes, and he was talking about how decide means to cut, right? That when you decide something, you sever something. I'm going this way and I'm not going that way. And I definitely had been on the fence, not even intentionally, to be honest with you, but my actions implied that I had been on the fence about really taking my business seriously. And I think at the time, I hadn't had any coaches or taken any programs or anything like that. I was just pure, like, sheer will and grit. I had like 3 part-time jobs, but then I also had my business, and like life was still moving on. And I got to a point where I was like, I don't want to sacrifice other areas of my life still trying to struggle and figure this out. And that was the first time I think I hired a coach, right? Like there were some things that I wanted to do and I was trying to progress, and I just couldn't figure it out, right? Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And so I remember, her giving me some great feedback, some stuff that it was like, man, I would have never thought of that. And it completely changed my business for the better. But I reached that fork in the road. And, I think only if you're at a crossroads in your business or at your life. For me, it was kind of like I had gotten diagnosed with cancer. I had been working in and out. Like sometimes I was working as a culinary employee. Sometimes I was a culinary entrepreneur. I was back and forth. I had kind of clients. I was doing a little bit of everything. I didn't specialize in anything. Like I was just kind of all over the place, and I was making income, but I kind of played the movie out, and I was like, is this how I want to be working in 10, 20 years? Not even necessarily is this what I want to be doing, because, in the food space, there's so many different things you can do. But I was thinking about like how I was working. And I had to ask myself like, well, I don't want to work like this. And if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, I've told the story about how when I was in culinary school, I had an externship at a catering company. And I remember the chef there, he was older and he was kind of looking to retire. And he was like, man, like if I stop working, the money stops coming in. If I go on vacation, the money stops. If I get sick, the money stops. And he was like, I don't know how I'm going to retire. And his only thought was to sell his business. And he was like, Evelyn, would you like to buy my business? And I remember thinking, because, I was in my early 30s at the time. I remember kind of playing the movie like, well, if this is where you are, I didn't say this to him, obviously, but I remember thinking to myself, like, if this is where you are at this point, if I buy your business, then I will be at this point when I reach that season of life. And I really had to start thinking like outside of the box. I had to really go, how long am I going to keep these big ideas that I have in the back of my brain? How long am I going to wait till I see somebody else do a version of it to feel like it's a valuable idea? How long am I going to try to figure it out on my own when I could just go and get some help? How long am I going to have piles and piles of notebooks and sticky notes and index cards and pieces of papers and journals with all these ideas that I just keep writing over and over and over and over and over again, year after year? And I remember I was like, if you want to do those things, you're going to have to be a different person. You're going to have to do business differently. You're going to have to move differently. You're going to have to function differently. And I remember kind of looking for a place like, there were no culinary programs, whether in a culinary school or online or coaching programs for someone who had the kind of ideas that I had. Most of the online coaching programs, even today, but this was well over 10 years ago, were for coaches or were for marketers or copywriters or, bloggers, or if there were consultants, they were restaurant consultants and things like that. But there was no place with a lived experience curriculum that could walk me through and say, I know you have this very out of the box idea and in the food space, and I'm here to tell you that it can work. And I know that you may not have seen it before. I know you may not even know what all needs to go in it. I know that you may wonder if you can make money from this thing. So you're just doing things that you know how to do. You know how to cater. You know how to be a personal chef. You know how to do dinner parties. You know how to do custom cakes. You know how to do meal prep, right? Those are things that you know how to do, but you've got this other idea or ideas over here, and they won't seem to leave you alone. They won't seem to let you go, no matter how much you try to focus and narrow and pick, something over here that makes more logical sense. And sometimes it's because we don't have the guidance of somebody who also created something out of the box. We don't have the community of other people who are creating things outside of the box, right? We don't have a process to follow. And it's like at this season of our life, we don't necessarily want to do that much more experimentation, because it's like we don't want to lose time and risking it, right? But I will tell you, the thing I've had to learn over the years is that entrepreneurship is a giant experiment. And, there are some basic rules. There are some more advanced strategies, but business is business. It's just that when it comes to the culinary space, there's these little idiosyncrasies that I have found that no other coach, industry could fully understand. They don't even understand the food buyer who's buying for more than just, I just don't want to be hungry and I need to have food in the house, right? And I've spent all these years with companies, creating my own companies, working with chefs, and I've really learned why our industry is so different, particularly when you don't own a restaurant or you don't want to work in a hotel or have a food truck or the more traditional things. I've really learned what makes it different and unique. I've really learned why there are people who are willing to pay premiums for our products and services, even if the average everyday person or other entrepreneurs or business gurus, even if they don't understand, because they don't know that buyer, right? They know the buyer of their stuff. But having worked at the Sur La Tables and different places and, gourmet grocery stores and selling my own products and services and programs, and then all of my clients, is like there's a trend there. There's a through line there. And I will say, one of the things I feel really blessed to have as a skill set, and maybe this is my love of mathematics, and maybe this is what made me a pretty decent engineer, is my ability to spot patterns and formulas. And I learned that there are certain things that need to go into a culinary business, but then there's certain, commonalities, character traits, personalities, buying habits, considerations of the kind of people who are willing to spend and pay more for culinary things over and over and over again. But then I also realized that there are certain strategies and frameworks and things that need to be in place when you have this more out of the box idea. If you think about it, there was a time where food blogging didn't exist, right? And at the time, people didn't know that you could make money from that. And people didn't know that you could make 7 figures putting your recipes on the internet. It wasn't a thing. But imagine if those people had waited until they saw somebody else do it, right? I remember I started teaching virtual cooking classes in 2010, before Instagram. Before Instagram. We almost don't remember life before Instagram, because Instagram came along later that year. So I had no Instagram following. You could not be monetized on YouTube. And I think I only had Facebook at the time. And I was doing a virtual cooking class. And I remember even years later, around the year 2018, somebody was like, people pay for virtual classes? And I was like, yeah, I've been doing them for almost a decade. And then here came the panorama, the panini sandwich, the Pandora, if you will. Okay. And then it was like, oh, virtual classes are a thing. And what's interesting is that if I had waited until the world realized that this was something that was valuable or people would be interested in, I would have been way behind the trend, and so way behind the curve, right? I was ahead of the trend, if you think about it. And so, I don't know if I've ever shared why I created the Chef's Table experience. I know I talk a lot about charging premium prices and getting high-end clients, and that is a part of it, right? I definitely in that program deep dive, what it takes to get into the mind and into the wallets, let's be clear, of a high-end culinary buyer. I love it. I'm passionate about chefpreneurs getting paid their worth. But one of the things that I don't think I've talked about enough or shared enough is that I really built it in such a way that if you have this off the wall idea, if you know that you're at this crossroads and you're like, I really want to take this thing seriously, and it's not that you want to prove something to someone else, you want to show yourself I want to trust my idea. I want to give this idea enough gas to become a thing. Like, I really want to take it seriously. I don't want to haphazardly do it. I don't want to halfway do it. Like, I really want to give a valiant effort to this, and I just need the structure and the strategy and the support, and dare I say the accountability to do it, right? Because there's nothing like investing in something that makes you show up. It's nothing like being in the room with other people that makes you go a little further. Like, for example, you may or may not know this, but I started ballet in my 40s, and I could have decided to watch some free YouTube videos, and that may have gotten me to a point, but I wouldn't have learned proper technique. I wouldn't have gotten correction. I wouldn't have got direction. I wouldn't have got a community, and I definitely wouldn't have got accountability. And I've definitely been in classes where there were days where I just didn't want to show up, and I didn't want to do it, but man, I mastered a skill on the day that I didn't even want to be there, right? And that's because there were other people there. That's because I was investing, right? And I knew that if I invested, I would show up, right? I knew that as long as I show up, then I knew I was going to do the work, because showing up was half the battle. I knew that I was going to be held accountable, and I knew that I was going to be corrected to get me to my ultimate goal. And I just think in the culinary space, we don't have enough of that. I feel like for those of us who have chosen not to go the restaurant route, I feel like there's not a place for us to gather. I recently went to a chef organization meeting earlier this year, and it was interesting because I forgot that, there's this whole culture of chefs that if you don't work in a restaurant or don't want to work in a restaurant or something like that, like, it's almost like they don't think you're a real chef, right? And I was like, man, I am so grateful for the women who have come through the Chef's Table experience, the connections that they've made with each other. I get to be a part of that community, even though I'm the curator of that community, because it can get lonely out here, particularly if you are a woman in the culinary field, particularly if you are a Black woman in the culinary field, and you're not working in a restaurant or necessarily having a catering company, and you have other things that you want to do. Sometimes it's nice to be in a space where you're not the minority. And when I went to that chef meeting, I was definitely in the minority for more than one reason. I was definitely in the minority because I was a woman. I definitely was in the minority because I was a Black woman. I definitely was in the minority because, I've never worked in a restaurant, never had the desire to work in a restaurant, and I don't believe in hustling, grinding, and working my life away, right? I'm definitely a lot of times in the minority because I don't feel that chefs should make pennies. I definitely feel that we are luxury artisans and that we should be compensated accordingly, right? And I wanted to create a place, and so I did, for women like me, women who have a passion for food, who want to be entrepreneurs, who are entrepreneurs, who do not want to have a restaurant, work in a restaurant, don't want to go that route, who also don't believe in hustle and grind, who also don't believe in working their life away, who also have interests outside of the kitchen, who also still want to look cute and don't want to look ran down all the time, right? That we want some work-life harmony, and that, yes, the kind of lives that we want to live for us to be fully expressed requires a certain amount of income. And so therefore we're going to charge premium prices, and we're going to do it unashamedly. And I wanted to create a community of women who were like tired of the DIY, right? Like, have you ever seen those videos where people are like, oh, I'm not going to pay X for that. All I got to do is buy $780,000 worth of materials, and I can make 3 of them myself. And it's kind of like, right, but the time and the energy, like, you could have just bought it. And it's so funny because all of my clients are very similar to me, that we're in a phase of life where it's like, no, I don't get bonus points for struggling and figuring it out on my own. I don't get a star. I don't win an award for learning the hard way. I rather invest in the solution that somebody else has already worked through and take the parts that I know will work for me and run with that. Even if it doesn't give me everything, it's definitely going to give me a head start and save me a lot of time. And so I don't even know, what else I want to say. It's just that if you're at that crossroads, I just want to let you know that I feel you. I see you. I've been there. I have been at that crossroad at multiple other places in life, right? Where it's like, hey, it's time to, what they say, pee or get off the pot. It's like that's the nicest way I can say it. And I just want to encourage you, if you're at that crossroads, be honest with yourself. about what it is that you really want. Like, be so honest. And it's not about you knowing how to do something. It's just knowing what you want and then moving in that direction. I was having a conversation with my mom a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I've talked to my mom since then, but like we were having this conversation, and I was telling her that I remember when I worked in corporate America as an engineer, I remember that I did not enjoy my job at all. And I found myself in this group of people, as are in many workplaces, who were there, but they didn't love the job and just complained about not wanting to be there and not treated well. And this, what you name it, the complaints were there in abundance, right? And I remember telling her that while we all complained that we didn't like our jobs, I was making moves to get out of there. And I remember that not only did I get promoted and then move to our headquarters, and then was at our headquarters for 2 years, but then I had went on to go to culinary school, graduate culinary school, start businesses, all that kind of stuff. And they were still there in the same position, complaining about the same thing. And it took them almost a decade or more to move around, right? To finally take personal accountability and action for having a different, work experience. And I was like, I'm not that kind of person. I absolutely believe that a different life is a decision away, and that you can decide what kind of life, what kind of business that you want to have, but then you have to one, be honest about what you really want. And then two, you have to decide that that is the only option. And three, you have to then decide, am I willing to put in the time, the energy, the attention, the money, the resources, right? The effort to have what it is that I want, and go from, I hope this will happen, to come hell or high water, I'm going to make it happen. I think about it like a GPS, right? Like the end coordinates are the end coordinates. Now, the route to get there may change depending on what has happened in the environment, whether it's been a car accident or a flood or this or construction or whatever. But the destination does not change, even if you get down on a detour. And so I'm just going to encourage you to do that. So maybe this video is just to encourage you that if you are at the crossroads, it's time to make a decision. You know what you really want. The thing is, you just need to be honest with yourself about the fact that you really want it. And then you have to decide that it's the only option. And then you have to make moves in that direction, in the right direction only, and be committed to, it's going to take what it takes. It's going to take how long it takes, right? Because the time is going to pass by anyway. So with that being said, if you're somebody who is like, you know what, I would love to be a part of the Chef's Table experience because I need that kind of community. I need to be able to build this out of the box idea. I need to be around other women. I'm tired of being in the room and being the minority, whether that is in race, whether that is in gender, whether that is in culture, whether that is in mindset. Like, that takes up so much energy. I'm not even going to hold you. As someone who went from one male-dominated field, being an engineer and working in manufacturing, to another one, I can tell you, I have craved having a space of other women who enjoy womanhood, but also love food, but also love luxury and want to charge premium prices. And so I created it for myself. And so if you feel like you fall into that group of people, I invite you to apply to the Chef's Table experience. There's nothing like it. There is nothing like it. And I don't say that because I've created it. I'm telling you what my clients have told me. I'm telling you how my clients who have graduated from the Chef's Table still send me DMs and business updates, how they still send opportunities to the current women in the program, how they just view life differently, right? Not just business, but they view life differently. So listen, like I said, I didn't have a outline. I didn't have notes. I didn't have bullet points, but I just felt compelled to share about being at that crossroads in your business. And if you need some help about which way to go, right? You can always book a diagnostic call. There is an investment for the call, right? You know, I've had people reach out to me recently because I've been doing a little bit more marketing on Instagram, and they want help with their businesses, but they don't want to invest. And it's like, well, they're just not ready. That doesn't make them bad people. They're not ready. They haven't hit that crossroads where it's like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I will figure it out. I will make it happen. Because you need that energy to be a successful entrepreneur. You need to know that entrepreneurship is a giant experiment, but you also need to know, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be resourceful to get what I need. So with that being said, I feel like this video is long enough. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to apply to the Chef's Table Experience, you can go to the chefstableexperience.com. The link will be in the description box and also in a pinned comment, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.